Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mara Obra, and on behalf of BPIE, as well as GNE Finance, a partner in the H2020 funded EuroPace and Opengela projects, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, which will focus on achieving the 2030 climate goals via the use of one-stop shops to enable energy-efficient home renovations in the multifamily building sector. Multifamily buildings represent 47% of residential dwellings in Europe, yet the sector remains largely overlooked in terms of sustainable renovations and energy retrofits, despite having a growing need for them. So throughout this webinar, we aim to provide you with insight into how cities and regions can overcome the barriers present when promoting and supporting multifamily renovations amongst various socioeconomic classes. Benchmarking study will provide a market overview of home renovation programs within Europe, while in-depth case studies from Spain, France, and Belgium will be featured. These examples will demonstrate how communities, in partnership with local stakeholders, can carry out high-performance renovations and will offer practical solutions for increasing the uptake of multifamily building retrofits. I will be the moderator for today's session, and I will be joined by the 4 industry experts shown on screen. These will be Jonathan Volt, a project manager at the Building Performance Institute Europe, Kristina Klimovic, GNE Finance's head of advisory and consulting, Roel Vermeeren, a renovation strategy advisor at the Vlaamse Overheid, and Raphaël Kloostre, the general manager of ILE-DE-FRANCE Energy. Before we hear from our speakers, I'd first like to ask that all of our audience members join us on Slido for a few polls. You can access Slido using your mobile device and can connect either by scanning the QR code visible on screen right now, or you can visit the website at www.sli.do. You will then be prompted to enter in a code, and this code is listed on screen. It is 007663. So we'll just wait a while some additional audience members roll in, make sure that everyone has access to the polls. Just wait a bit longer. All right, so we can move on to the first question, and the first question is a bit of a warm-up question. We'll just change to that screen now. The first question is, where are you joining us from? I think if we just click on present. At the top, green button, present. Perfect. So we see a lot of participants from Brussels. That's great. Netherlands, Barcelona, Belgium, Ireland. Joining us from your computers online. Thank you for that descriptive location. Berlin. I see we have more audience members joining us. So for those of you who are just joining, please join us on Slido for our polls. You can see the QR code on screen. We have several attendees joining from Berlin. That's great. Great to see. Welcome. Ireland. Great. We'll just wait another couple of seconds. All right, it seems like everyone, oh, one more. It seems like everyone who wanted to answer has answered. Barcelona, great. Madrid, well, everyone, welcome to the webinar. We'll move on to the next question. And the next question will be listed very soon. It is, what would you like to see being addressed during this event? And you can choose up to 4 answers. Okay, so there's a lot of interest in the multifamily building approach, which is great because that is the main topic today. Best practices, existing one-stop shop models and success cases, addressing common renovation barriers. Financing is of interest as well to many people. I see we have some interest in replication. I see we still have some attendees who have to answer, so if you'd like to join, please join in at Slido and scan the QR code. So for now, it seems like multifamily building approach is the most interesting, and we should be addressing the common barriers to renovation. And there's a lot of interest in best practices, existing one-stop shop models, and their success cases and replication potential of programs. Great. So we can move on then, and hopefully we will be able to address these themes and topics within today's session. In case anyone has any questions for our speakers, please submit them to us through the platform in the questions section, and we will answer them during the question and answer portion of the session. I'd also like to mention that today's webinar will be recorded and will be shared with you after the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to Jonathan Volt. Jonathan, if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, I am unmuted now, and I hope you see my screen as well.
We do.
All right, perfect. And okay, sorry. All right, so thank you, Mara, for this introduction, and it was very interesting to see the Slido result, and I hope I will address a couple of them in my presentation here today. So as Mara said, my name is Jonathan Volt. I'm a project manager at BPAE. And one of the projects that I have been involved in as a researcher is the turnkey retrofit project, which is a Horizon project. And I will tell you a little bit more about that in a while. But as you see here, my presentation will be the results from a benchmarking study we did now more than 2 years ago, but also some first results from a study that we're working on. So where do we go from here, in which we will derive some lessons learned and key recommendations for the EU and national policymakers on how to really scale up the one-stop shops in Europe. And as I'm the first one to present here, I just want to set the scene. Why are we discussing one-stop shops? And why is this an important issue? And of course, it all comes down to what you say in my field, that the number of renovations and the magnitude of these renovations that are being carried out is not ambitious enough. They're too few, and they don't lead to the energy savings that we need them to do. So basically, we're not in track to decarbonize the sector by 2030 and 2050. And this is the reason, basically, because that people view renovations as too complex. They are too costly, and they are seen as time consuming. And all of these are in most cases also true. And in addition to that, people see, people don't really have the trust in the experts and in the advice that they get. So many people renovate based on questionable advice, and maybe that's a bigger problem in the single family house sector than in the multifamily that we're discussing here today. And basically, well, I will say in a coming slide that one-stop shop is not a silver bullet, but at the same time, it is an instrument that can lessen some of these barriers that we see, that really can improve the renovation advice that are given to the building owner, but also, as you see in the first one, targeting messages to the needs of individual users. So for multifamily buildings, it can be to really pitch the idea of deep energy renovations. It really brings together all the actors that are involved in a renovation of a multifamily building. Is often many different actors with different expertise, and the one-stop shop can bring this together and then really simplify the process for the building owner or for the investor. And of course, setting up, integrate the long-term finance solutions and making all these things easier. I think these are the main things. And we see example in some countries that the one-stop shops that have been around for a while and have carried out successful energy renovations, they have also been able to build trust within their region. And I think this is important as well, that people know that if I go to this service, I will get the renovation advice that I need. And if we go to the next slide, and so I know this is maybe boring to listen to about Horizon projects and what we do, but really to justify everything I will say later on, I mean, we have been working on this turnkey retrofit project, which is a 3.5-year long Horizon project in which we have taken 2 existing one-stop shop, Hero and Opengela in France. We have tried to evolve these models and turned it into a new one-stop shop or integrated renovation service, which we're then also trying to replicate to Ireland and Spain. And we are now on the final stretch of this work, and it will wrap up in the beginning of next year. And we have, of course, done this together with many other very good organizations, as you will see here. But enough on that. So first of all, the benchmarking study. So for 2.5 years ago, more or less, we started this research where we looked at what we then considered the most relevant and most innovative at the time, and one-stop shops. And these were, let's see if I can see, Hero, Opengela, which are involved in the turnkey retrofit project, but also Octave, which carries out deep renovation. Sire in Spain, Super Homes and Pro Energy Homes in Ireland, Better Home in Denmark. ENEGIES, which is maybe more than a one-stop shop, but I also tick all the boxes for what we define as a one-stop shop, as well as the retrofit works in the UK. And what I want to say with this is that all these models are very diverse in terms of their main purpose. Why were they started at the beginning? What are the revenue streams? So basically, what does their business model look like? The organizational structure. So do they have a small team that really brings different actors together, or do they have the whole team within the one-stop shop itself? The renovation solutions that are being carried out, is it a focus on different types of renovations, or are they specialized on deep renovations? That's the main divide, I would say. And yeah, and on another aspect as well, they are very different. And we discussed this a bit in the report that you can find on the Turnkey Retrofit website. But basically, this work, I think it really gave us some insight to what is it that makes one-stop shop for renovation work, and yeah, why does some one-stop shop why do they not work? And this will show in the recommendations that I will come to in a bit. But we also try to dissect the one-stop shops, and we did so in different way. We did so in business models. So we dissect what kind of different aspects do the different models have in their business models, but we also dissected the renovation journey. And the slide that you see now is what we call a typical renovation journey for multifamily buildings. And I'm interested to hear from the other speakers if they agree on this typical journey. But basically, and I should say, we did this really to understand how does these models work, and how can we then also improve them. And what we're doing now, or what we are doing in a turnkey retrofit, is really to replicate the model, and that comes down to replicate, again, different parts of the business model, but also different parts of the renovation journey, and they have to look a bit different in different regions. Okay, I will quickly go through it. I'm not sure if I have the time, but I will do so anyhow. The first step is to attract customers. And for multifamily building, it's really to convince them that doing this renovation, starting this renovation journey is actually a good idea. And then conduct the first diagnosis. In multifamily buildings, it is to come to the building, carry out looking at the building, what can be done, and what are the cost optimal solutions for this building, and how can we bring it to a deep renovation. Then together with the residents, discuss the work program. So I mean, what kind of measures do they want in the building? What kind of measure would make the building not just more efficient, but also more pleasant to live in for the tenants? Then, of course, the conceptualizing of this to really, when these steps has been agreed, to really bring together a team of experts, engineers, architects, to really map out the project that this renovation will entail, what kind of work is carried out at what time. And of course, select the professionals and then carry out the renovation. And I think what is very important for good one-stop shops is that they carry out some kind of follow-up check to make sure that, yeah, the renovation led to the results that were promised in the one-stop shop at the beginning. All right, and I have been mentioning this a bit, and I will quickly go through it, but our main conclusion from this benchmarking work, and what we then integrated in the turnkey retrofit project, were these recommendations: to have a strong network with local actors. This is something that's maybe difficult to replicate, but you need to build this in each and every city that you set up a one-stop shop. To have a single point contact as well for the homeowner or building owner to really follow them through in the renovation process, which for a multifamily building can be, I mean, over a year or so. Of course, have a value proposition that focus on the customer experience to make sure that they are happy, and then also at the later stage might recommend the service to other building owner. I think that is key. Have a strong online platform. I haven't mentioned this, but this is one of the key aspects of the turnkey retrofit project, to really digitalize some of the solutions that is possible to digitalize. And this can, for example, be to entice people to sell the idea of renovation in the beginning, but also allow a more smooth communication between the building owner and then the one-stop shop, or the person that guides them through this renovation journey. And consider different renovation streams. This is something we also saw that in different regions, in different countries, you will need to consider different type of revenues, or different type of models, because you have different system in place, and the same, it's not possible to replicate exactly the same thing from France to Ireland or France to Spain as we tried. And of course, a good collaboration among the professionals that are involved is also key to a successful one-stop shops. And then, I mean, in this work, we have been working on this for a couple of years now, and now we are working on a paper where we derive some lessons learned from this replication effort in the turnkey retrofit project, and really try to create recommendations for EU and national policymakers, how they can scale up the uptake of one-stop shops. And basically, if we go from the left to the right, the first one is, of course, maybe the most obvious one too. You can require member state to set up one-stop shops in every city that are bigger than a certain size. And I think if you change this around, you can say that if we now push all the citizens to carry out renovations, they should have reliable information to do this. And I think one-stop shop is one way to do that. And this can, of course, be through an article in the PPD or some other way. And it can also be done indirectly. For example, I mean, in the renovation wave, they put forward the idea of minimum energy performance standards as a way to increase the demand for renovation. And a logical solution to enable this is, of course, to set up one-stop shops that really will make the link between then the obligation to renovate to the building owner and allowing them to do so in a good and sensible way. And then we write here, contribute to a more favorable one-stop shop environment. And maybe that is a bit vague, but what we want to get at is to simplify it for cities to set up one-stop shops, or cities or private actors as well too. And this can be done through, for example, streamline the existing ELENA technical assistance and funding requirements. ELENA, as I think most of you know, is then this program that is run by the European Investment Bank and the European Commission. And I think by making these requirements more streamlined and maybe making them more simple, what is required for us to get funding and technical assistance for setting up a one-stop shop in our region, I think that would also allow for more one-stop shops to pop up across Europe. And this can also, it is also possible to help cities to set up one-stop shops by providing standardized one-stop shop project templates. So basically develop maybe 5 archetypes based on the best practices we have around Europe, and then allow cities to copy paste and of course adapt to their context. And then if they do so, they are also guaranteed to get this technical assistance and funding from the ELENA system. And of course, encourage local authorities and financial institutions to get involved and engaged. I think that is also one of the important aspects of successful one-stop shops, that you have this involvement of the local key institutions. And the third one, which we are working on very much in the turnkey retrofit project, is to offer replicatable one-stop shop elements. This can, for example, be the digital solution, so the website that you go to find information, the instruments that allows you to compare, for example, the cost saving or carbon savings that you will achieve by carrying out the deep renovation. How long with these available subsidies would the payback period be, for example? And this can also be the renovation conceptualization part, and so the financial and technical package can also be to some extent replicated and copy pasted for different regions where they have similar type of buildings and as in other regions. And then of course standardized contracts, I think that is something that will save local implementers a lot of time and money. And of course this last one is to provide detailed guidelines. And here I just want to say that there have been a lot of good projects, at least based on Horizon and based on the other city initiatives that are ongoing. But I think for local implementers, it can be difficult to really navigate among the maze of information. I think really to collect all this useful information at one place, all the evidence we have, and really to make it more accessible and available. And all right, so this is more or less my last slide. So to reiterate, a one-stop shop is not a single solution, but if we want to increase the demand for energy renovations, it is necessary, and we need them to really facilitate this increase of demand. But also they are they are only as good as their weakest link, in meaning that a one-stop shop is only as good as the advisor, contractors, local suppliers that they involved. You also need to make sure that in the local cities you have good actors, and I think training is needed in most of the regions on different type of expertise. And as we've seen in the turnkey, it's not possible to copy paste one model. You really need to adapt it to the different local markets. And use building data. I think the energy performance certificate databases across Europe can be used in one-stop shops, but I think really harmonize how we store EPC data and how we use them across Europe would also allow for a better replication of the different one-stop shop model and how they use the data. And I would just only here say that we also should use one-stop shops to really trigger deep renovation and really sell the idea of deep renovation and show that it is worth the effort. And I won't stay any longer here, but as I said, we are wrapping up this work on Turnkey Retrofit. You can find a lot of information on Turnkey Retrofit website. On the Solution for Renovation website, you can already now try out the one-stop shop that we have developed. And if you're interested to hear more, you can always contact me or speak your mind later in this webinar. And for this, I thank Mara and the team for this time, and I hand it back to you.
Thanks, Jonathan. It was really great to see that overview, and it's a great segue into our other programs. But I'd like to point out that you mentioned the benchmarking report, and for all of our audience members, you can actually download this report from the handout section in GoToWebinar, so feel free to do that at your own leisure. So moving forward, I'd like to hand over the floor to Kristina Klimovic. Hi, Kristina.
Hi, thank you, Mara, and thanks everybody. Please confirm that you can see my screen once I share.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. And again, my name is Kristina Klimovic, and I'm a head of advisory and consulting at GNE Finance. And we're a high-impact investment company focusing on managing, setting up, and operating home renovation programs across Europe. And specifically today, I'll be talking on behalf of the Opengela Program, which is developed and designed under the auspices of Horizon 2020 grant. Given to a number of partners by SINEA, formerly known as EASME. And in front of you, you can see a number of partners who bring together their expertise, knowledge, and various track records in running and operating home renovation programs together to create a program for the Basque Country. So you can see a really healthy mix of public and private sector here. We've got the Basque government, of course, the key stakeholder and the leader of the project. On the other hand, we have EVE, which is the energy agency of the Basque Country. We have Housing Europe, Federene at the European level. We have GNE Finance on the financing, and several other local partners as well who are absolutely instrumental at getting the program going. So the program is really based on the assumption that we need a home renovation formula in order to increase the trust to renovate. And the home renovation formula that we follow here is really threefold. First of all, we believe that technical assistance is absolutely key. And this again points back to what Jonathan was saying, that it's incredibly important to convince people to renovate, but also to explain to them in a very clear language without jargon what their renovation is, to provide confidence and to provide all kinds of coordination and advice throughout the whole process. The second element is affordable financing, and that's exactly where GNE Finance steps in and provides affordable long-term financing, and we combine our loans together with a number of subsidies as well. Then the third element is the smart funding, and here we're talking about the risk-sharing facility and specifically a social guarantee fund that we helped establish in the Basque Country in order to be able to lend to more vulnerable groups. Together, these three elements really result in the trust to renovate and hopefully will help us scale the market. So the Opengela program really has 4 key elements. First of all, it's the technical support that I mentioned earlier. It's the trusted contractors, and I'll speak about it again. It's all about verification, really vetting the contractors, knowing who we work with, and in the end of the day, creating trust with homeowners. Then it's customer support, whether it's in person or online. It's also very important to be able to walk into the office and talk to person face to face, and to learn more about the potential improvements, learn more about your community and what the building can benefit from. And lastly, of course, it's affordable financing. And here, a combination of subsidies, grants, and financing, so loans in this case, is very much key. So first, I'll focus also on the building interventions that are currently being offered in the Basque Country under Opengela Program. So it's essentially energy efficiency, renewable energy, and accessibility improvements, or so-called non-energy improvements, that in many cases involve stairs, elevators, but also lighting, because safety is a big issue in some of those neighborhoods. So it is about lighting within the building and directly outside the building as well. So the range of investment can really differ, because what we do within the program is we offer the renovation of a full multi-family building. So we're talking about the facade, the roof, the elevators, windows, but also about the renovation of individual apartments. And that's why the lowest threshold is 5,000 euros in this case. And so the building that you see on the right has actually been renovated as part of the program, and you can see the building right behind it, and that building has not yet been renovated. And so what we also like to highlight is the monthly payment capacity, because that's very important, not necessarily the amount of a whole loan, but how much it has to be paid monthly. And so we try to minimize that by making the term of the loan as long as possible. And so the monthly payment can start from 40 euros a month. So I mentioned earlier that the contractor vetting and validation process is very important. And indeed, almost everybody who's ever undertaking home renovation has had issues with contractors. There's always that contractor who doesn't deliver, who's not on time, or who doesn't have good oversight. And with that in mind, we created this vetting process that involves several steps. First of all, the technical validation. So here we really evaluate the technical capacity, types of measures that they would install, and their experience. Then we look at the financial validation. Have they been bankrupt? Have they not paid any of their obligations in the past? Do they have all the right insurance? So once that process is over, then we go into quality of the performance and experience. We'll look at specific accreditations, and we also check with previous clients of that contractor. And lastly, we also take into account the social aspects, such as various genders employed by the contractor, if the contractor also works with underemployed people or vulnerable people, and if the contractor is also committed to minimizing environmental footprint. Those elements are certainly a plus in the validation vetting process, because the program tends to have or intends to have a very strong social impact in the community as well. And so when we go to the financing side, the financing is really provided based on income, because the Opengela program in the Basque Country is primarily focused on the vulnerable groups. So there is a high prevalence of groups with low socioeconomic income. And so in this case, what happens is that, as you can see on this graph, a large portion is covered by grants, various aid, and only some part here in green is actually the amount that will be financed. So if we're retrofitting a large building, we want to retrofit the full building, and we want to use grants and subsidies as much as we can, and only some individuals will take out grants based on their income. And just a quick run through the problem, the solution, and the impact. So often when we did a couple of our surveys, often when we did a couple of our surveys, we noticed that people often say that loans are usually expensive and they're expensive monthly. So for us, the key element was to decrease the monthly installments to 40 euros a month. And then we also noticed that a large portion cannot actually get a loan from a typical bank loan because they are considered vulnerable and banks don't lend to them. And so it's very important to establish a social guarantee fund to ensure that financing can be accessible by all. And of course, to maximize the impact and to really facilitate urban regeneration of the neighborhoods. And so with that in mind, the way the program is structured is that we open district offices rather than having one large head office somewhere far away. It's all about having a local contact with people in their local office that's located very close to them. And a couple of words about the results. So the work has started and is in progress on 5 large buildings and 240 homes in Charquaga and also in Chonta. Those are 2 different districts in the Basque Country, and works are currently ongoing in Chonta on 221 homes, with over 70 being already completed to date, and estimated investment per home is 35,000 euros. So I also have to say a few words about the program expansion, because of course for us it's very important to establish an effective one-stop shop, but also then to take it to the next level. And so over the past couple of months, the Basque government worked together with the Fundación Repsol in order to establish a non-profit managing entity to manage the program and really galvanize its expansion into 5 new district offices that will be opening in October of this year. And so as GNE Finance, we will be supporting this rapid deployment by managing those 5 local offices. And the one element that we want to highlight during this launch is that for us it's incredibly important to elevate the social impact. And we'll do this also by improving employability of the local professionals. We'll specifically focus on hiring technicians and professionals struggling to find a job due to various issues in order to really create a strong impact in the community, and we'll always prioritize local workers and local contractors as well. So a couple of lessons learned, and I think this really piggybacks well on what Jonathan was saying earlier, that it's important to combine grants together with loans, because financing is certainly a key element, but renovation is very challenging and very expensive to undertake, relying only on public money. The second lesson learned is that a well-structured public-private partnership is really there to create a proper market uptake. And it is very important to structure such partnership in a way that both partners have their reasons that are aligned to work together, and also that both can benefit over the long term. And also what we noticed is that given the nature of the program and the focus on vulnerable groups, having local offices is very important, very helpful for the communities. And lastly, financing, of course, is important, and it's a key solution, but it's not the solution. And financing is often sold as part of the package and offered together with other technical assistance. You can learn more about Opengela by visiting the website opengela.aos. So it's offered in several different languages. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to questions about this program. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. It was really great to get that new socioeconomic aspect. You know, not everyone thinks about the vulnerable when thinking about energy renovations. Some might just consider it an action of privilege. You know, if you have spare money, then it's time to renovate. But in reality, what you're saying is that Opengela targets the vulnerable and aims to increase their energy efficiency as well. So it's really refreshing to see a program like that. Next up, I would like to welcome Roel Vermeeren to contribute as well and to present his presentation. Roel, if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mara. I will share my screen.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Roel Vermeijden from the Flemish Energy and Climate Agency, and I will give you some brief insights into some policy measures we're having right now in Flanders, or that will be launched very soon. We don't have an actual complete one-stop shop for apartment buildings, but we're preparing some elements that must lead us towards the direction of a one-stop shop. So basically, let's start from the goal 2050 in our long-term renovation strategy. Basically, I think I just, is my presentation still on?
Yes, we can see the bars.
Sorry.
Graphs.
Yeah. Okay, this bar graph, we see the actual division of the energy performance of buildings in the Flanders region. And basically in 2050, we want to reach every single building the A label at the right end of the graph. But for the moment, we only have like 5% of the buildings that are in this A label segment. So we need to renovate approximately 3% of all buildings each year. So the renovation rate of 3% or more. And including the 850,000 apartments we have in the Flanders region. They're in 130,000 apartment blocks. So we have some general instruments launched to stimulate deep renovations, because that's what we like to see in our long-term renovation strategy. So we notice that mostly new owners, they will have a big chance of renovating their building within the first periods after they have the house in their possession. So 50% is renovating in the first 3 years. But we notice also that in these renovations, the energetic part is forgotten most of the time. So we need to encourage people to renovate or to augment the energetic performance of the buildings. So last fall, we got some new instruments. It's on the one end, an interest-free renovation credit, and on the other end, a label grant. So these are general support measures. And this interest-free renovation credit, that is exclusively for new owners. And basically, these new owners can have an additional loan with their bank if they carry out a deep renovation within 5 years after the transaction period. At the bottom left, you see the amounts that can be loaned for these buildings. It's up to 60,000 euros if people renovate their house towards the A label. For apartment buildings, it's a bit less, but it's also a very significant amount. Then at the right lower part of this slide, you can see the amounts of the label grant. So this label grant is also an interesting instrument to encourage owners for deep renovation. It's not only for the new owners, it's for all the owners. And basically, the system is if one renovates this building towards label C, B, or A, they can get an additional grant on top of the existing grants. So these loans and grants can be accumulated. So these are very general instruments. But we noticed that for apartment buildings, these instruments are not specific enough. And that's why in the energy policy paper, there are some specific measures mentioned for apartment buildings. And on the first one is support for making up a master plan for BENOvation, as we call it in Flanders, that assists the associations of co-owners to renovate the large apartment buildings. So with that measure, we work on the topic of advice and guidance. That's very crucial in the stimulating of apartment building renovations. better renovation. So BENOvation is about better renovation. It's just a wordplay, but we're using it in communication. Next to this support measure, we need financing, and that's why the energy policy mentions a realization of a public-private rolling fund for renovation loans with longer periods, longer terms, up to 30 years. So that's the measure working on the finance part. I'll just go into the details of these measures. So this master plan of BENOvatie, why would we need it? The structure of co-ownership of apartment buildings is very difficult, the difficult decision-making process. And basically these co-ownerships, they need technical guidance. And it exists in the market, but it's very costly. So there will be an incentive needed to have more co-ownerships carrying out these specific advices. So we need this guidance. We got some inspiration from a very interesting Horizon 2020 project, ACE Retrofit, that was carried out in several cities in Belgium, focusing on the renovation of big apartment buildings, and also in the running live Be Real project that runs until 2024. We are having renovations in demo projects of over 4,500 apartment buildings. Also, we got some inspiration from our colleagues in the Netherlands, the Dutch Energy Savings Fund, that has some years of experience with loans for co-ownerships up to 30 years. Also in the Flanders region, recently there was a very interesting tool developed, the EcoTalk tool. It's specially designed for syndics, so the co-ownerships of the buildings. And basically it gives you some insight in the life cycle cost. It's very easy to use, and you can very easily have some insights in the multi-year budget for upcoming costs, including the costs for deep renovation. And based on all these insights, we are preparing right now a pilot call, which will be launched in the fall, aiming for buildings with at least 20 apartments. And we'd like to offer them an advice, not only an audit of the actual condition and the multi-year maintenance plan, because that's a bit old school, but we need them on top of that to have some renovation scenarios towards the long-term goal included in this audit. And also this service would integrate other tasks like offering some real-life guidance towards these co-ownerships, also preparation for implementation of the works, and also offering advice on the financing options. So that's one thing we would include in this project. But next to this this master plan, this technical advice, we noticed, and we had some advice from the sector, but also from our colleagues in the Netherlands, that a very crucial factor is integrated guidance in person. So a specialized professional that goes to the meetings of the co-ownerships and advises them on the ways to renovate towards these long-term goals, on the financial aspects, and guides them towards the end through the whole process. So that's why we're not only creating a financial support for this general renovation advice, but also a team of coaches that can offer this guidance for the next years. We will launch a call, so basically it's a double call. On the one side, we will have a capacity of renovation advice funding, So basically, it will fund almost the entire cost of making up this advice. And on the other hand, these co-ownerships can have free advice from and guidance from these coaches. That's for the guidance and advice part. Then the other part, very interesting or very crucial as well, is the financing part. And therefore, yeah, we know that the actual loan terms in Flanders are only up to 10 years, but it's not enough, because if we need these deep renovations, then the investment is that high that yeah, we don't, it's not possible, not feasible to have loans on a term of 10 years, because that's too expensive for the owners. So that's why we'd like longer terms. And basically, there are some banks, if all the conditions are met, they're already offering terms up to 20 years, but it's basically less. That's why we in the Flanders region want to stimulate a loan with a longer term. It could be a public-private fund, but basically the last months we are working together with a Flemish public investment agency, examining the possibilities of using the Invest EU fund to realize a risk guarantee. Because we noticed also the last months that the private banking sector is getting more interest in offering loans with a longer term if the credit is insured by a third party. And that's basically the way we're evolving right now. We're having also good contacts with some big banks, amongst one of them is already offering loans up to 20 years. In the meantime, we're finalizing this call for support for the Masterplan Renovation. It will be launched in the fall. We already have an interesting budget, so we can launch it and keep it running for 2 or 3 years. And in the meantime, also within the Be Real project, we are carrying out renovation works for big apartment buildings in the cities of Ghent, Antwerp, and Mechelen. And while doing so, we're getting the methodology into good practices, which we will spread throughout other cities in Flanders and Belgium. So basically, that's it. That's the status of our measures in Flanders, and we hope that within the next year we can evolve towards a more integrated approach of this, also including a lot of local actors. Thank you very much for your attention. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Roel. That was really informative, and it's great that you mentioned the integrated services. And I'm sure Jonathan would agree on this. Integrated services are really the way to go moving forward with one-stop shops. The whole concept of integrated services is that you offer exactly what the client needs. So not just technical advice, but rather financial support, customer support, contractor training. So it's really this plethora of services that helps engage the consumer. And Sanea actually wrote a paper on this, which backs up this claim. So it's really interesting to hear so many one-stop shops thinking about becoming integrated or promoting integrated services. So next up, I want to invite Raphael Klooster to the floor. Raphael, if you could unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, all. I'm going to show my screen now. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry, it's not the beginning. Good afternoon. I'm going to tell about ILE-DE-FRANCE Energy example. Oh, I've got a battery problem. I'm going to talk about ILE-DE-FRANCE Energy and explain what we do, how we do it, and what is a global renovation for us. So we are a public-private company. Public-private means that our shareholders are partly the ILE-DE-France region and partly private shareholders. Sorry. So the main shareholder is ILE-DE-France region, which is Paris region, but much bigger than just Paris. It's about 12 million people in ILE-DE-France region. And we also have Paris city and some other local authorities in our shareholders, plus some finance actors. The reason why the region decided to create such a company is that in this region, we have mostly collective buildings. That's one of the most dense areas in Europe. It's about almost 5 million dwellings, of which 3/4 are collective. And as you probably know, in collective buildings, there are some barriers to energy renovation that we don't have in individual buildings. It's already hard in individual houses. It's even harder in collective buildings. First of all, because it's non-professionals, just people who have to decide on very big and expensive projects when it's a big condominium. So it's not professional managing complicated projects. We also have very diverse situations with some people very interested in energy renovation, some not interested at all, some people rich or not rich or just average, some young and old. So we have a big variety of situations. In individual houses, only 2 people have to agree, usually a couple. It's not always that easy, but a couple has to agree to start an energy renovation. In condominiums, it is a group of people who don't necessarily know each other. In our case, it's only big condominiums. We only work with condominiums above 50 apartments, so more than €1 million projects. So it's big projects, big condominiums with people who all have different motivations. The decision-making process is always really long. They often don't trust private companies. And at the end, it's really hard, even if they decide to go for works, it's really hard to find financing solutions for all of them. And in a condominium, if there's no financing solution for one person, then this person will, at the end of the day, have to sell his or her apartment. So it's very important to find financing solutions for all of them. So to try to overcome all these barriers, ILE-de-France region created ILE-de-France Energy. And the objective is to provide a one-stop shop, therefore, all-in-one solution. So what we call all-in-one is for engineering. Classic is architect engineering and thermal engineer. They existed before us, but we also provide finance engineering and the project management. Project management is the one who will be the main, the one who talks to the co-owners and to their trustee, the company that manages the building for them, the one that prepares the calendars and all the documents that they will have to that will be delivered to the condominium. I will provide some detail on all these activities: architect, thermal engineer, and finance engineering, and I will give you 1 or 2 examples. But first of all, I want to explain what is a global renovation for us. So you probably know that a building wastes energy through its walls and windows and doors and roofs and floor, plus the systems, the heating and the ventilation. So what we do is that we try to do everything that needs to be done. So as much as possible, we do the outside wall insulation. In condominium, at least in France, it's not possible to insulate inside because inside it's not collective, it's individual walls. So the condominium cannot decide to insulate all the apartments. So we only do outside insulation, and therefore the main what triggers a renovation is when there's a need for renovation of the wall, and they need to renovate the wall, and therefore they decide to insulate it at the same time. But because they renovate and insulate the wall, we will suggest them to do the same for the roof, especially if the roof is getting a bit old. We'll suggest to do the same for the floor. We'll suggest them to change the windows, even if it's a bit complicated in condominium, because some people will have changed their window already on an individual basis, and some will have all windows. And we will also change their ventilation system or create a more controlled one. And at the end, because for us it only comes last, we change the heating system and hot water production. Well, sadly, some big business will have come to change their heating system before us, but we tried as much as possible to do a global renovation like that. that doesn't mean we always manage to do all of that, because if they've recently changed their roof or recently changed their heating system, therefore we won't do it. But our objective is to do all of it, all of this 1, 2, 3, 6 points. So what solutions do we provide? First of all, the architect will design the technical solution on all the building aspects, so windows, walls, floor, and roof. It will also design the aesthetical aspect, because when you add an outdoor insulation, you have a new appearance. The building will look new. So will they want exactly the same building, or will they want small differences, big differences compared to what they had before? That's what the architect will work on. And at the end, he will write all the specifications for the work and publish the tender and analyze all the company offers to recommend to the condominium what are the best company offers, building company offers. The thermal engineer will more or less do the same on the ventilation and heating aspects. So design the technical solutions and write the specifications in order to find the companies that are the best for this very project. And he will also, the thermal engineer will also make an estimation of the energy savings and ideally help to go for the most ambitious work program. And finally, the financial engineer will first of all look for subsidies. That's what they want the most. But the financial engineer will also help the poor households to see if they can have private individual subsidies because of their low income. And we'll do what I call financing tables or financing simulations. Therefore, try to see for every individual situation how much is going to cost, but not only how much is going to cost, also how much they will have in terms of subsidies. What will the installments, monthly installment be if they go for a loan, and how much the installment be minus the energy savings, and therefore what will the impact be on their monthly finance. I will give you an example of that at the end. One of the objectives of that is to help them take a decision and also show them that the most ambitious programs are not always the most expensive ones for them. And of course, we also provide loans ourselves. That's why we call ourselves one-stop shop, because we provide technical and financial solutions. So we will provide them loans that can benefit to all the co-owners. So the condominium signs for the loans, and then only the co-owners that are interested will take part to the loan. We can offer soft loans, 0% because the state, national government pays the interest for them, or at least for the energy efficiency part. There's always non-efficient energy efficiency parts in our project. So in that case, it's a market loan at a bit less than 2%. For 15 years. There's an insurance on this loan, and we can do that because we've got an EIB, European Investment-Backed Credit Line of 60 million euros. Now I would like to show you the point of view of co-owners, because I'm talking about from our point of view, but at the end of the day, our objective is to make non-professional people who are not professional of this, go for big investment. The average investment for us, for our project, is 25,000 euro per apartment. So it's quite big, and their motivation is unfortunately not CO2 savings, because I think everybody would go for CO2 savings if it was 10 euros, maybe 100 euros, but for 25,000 euros, they want more than saving the planet. They also want personal interest. And the main motivation is the building maintenance. They come for global renovation if their building is getting a bit old, needs some renovation for technical reasons because it's aging, or aesthetical reasons because it's definitely looking rubbish and it's less nice to live in there. And people who want to sell their apartment know that they will sell it for a low price because it's not looking nice and it needs renovation. So it's always energy efficiency embedded in more global projects. Another motivation is comfort. Most of the buildings we work for are buildings built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, sometimes 80s. And people often complain of cold apartments in winter, more and more hot apartments in summer, and they want insulation to feel better in their apartments. Of course, energy and CO2 savings count, but it's not the main motivation. Even though I must say that often in project there are some leaders, and for this little group of leader, 1 or 2, 3 people who lead the project, CO2 can count more than average. But when we have big meetings with 50, 100, 200 co-owners, it is rather common that no one ever mentions CO2. And we must be aware of that. Another motivation is legal compliance. In France, it is mandatory to insulate when you renovate your outdoor walls, unless you can prove that it's not possible because the building is under patrimonial protection, or if it doesn't make sense financially. But by default, you must insulate. And also, it will be banned to rent F and G energy performance certificate categories by, oh sorry, we can't read on my slide. In 2024, it will not be allowed to rent apartments class G, category G, and in 2028, category F will be out of the renting market. So that can have a big impact on the energy renovation market. The only thing I'm fearing is, I don't know if it will encourage people to do global renovation or just small urgent renovation, like changing the windows and things like that, to move to category E. The impact of all that is the green value and the brand discount. Therefore, apartments in the best energy categories are worth more than apartments in the worst energy categories. And there are studies published every year by notaries. Notaries in France are some sort of lawyers who record every real estate transaction. So they have a massive database with every single real estate transaction that happens in the country, and they know the price, the location, the age, the state of the building, the condition of the building, and the energy category. Based on this database, they can make a correlation analysis, and the conclusion is, for example, that in Paris suburb, we call Petit Couronne, so near Paris, but not Paris itself, an apartment in the best energy categories is worth 12% than an apartment in the worst energy categories, or if all the other parameters are the same. So 12% of 300,000 euros, for example, is 36,000 euros. So it can make a massive difference. And I wanted to provide an example of what I call the finance plan or finance table. That's a recent project we worked on. So we've not done the renovation yet. We only did a survey, an analysis of the building. What we do is we always tell them what they could do in terms of work program, what we call it a scenario. So we suggest 3 or 4 scenarios. There's always number 1, basic, usually with very little energy efficiency aspects. That's what they need to do anyway for the maintenance of the building. There's a scenario work program 3, where there's everything that we would like to do, and an in-between one where we take away the most expensive or most complicated works. So on this example, there was a 120 apartment building in the east of Paris. They needed to do the renovation of their walls, and the scenario 1, the work program 1, had no insulation because it's cheaper. We suggested that they insulate the floor because it basically cost nothing, and they needed to renovate their mechanical ventilation because they have moist problem in their bathrooms, and we had to do some fire safety works and some outdoor light works. This was 1.4 million euros they had to spend anyway, just for maintaining the building, and mostly not for energy saving reasons. That was 8,000 euros for an average apartment. I think it was a 2-bedroom apartment, 2 or 3, I can't remember. And the energy saving expected was 27%. On the 2 other work programs, if we added the insulation of all the walls, and in the work program 3, the replacement of the old windows. So to be honest, most windows had been replaced already by the co-owners. So there were only some windows to replace, plus the roof insulation. In scenario 2, work program 2, it was 2.6 million euros. In work program 3, it was 2.8. So for one co-owner, it was 8,000, 15,000, or 16,000. If we only show that to them, you can be 100% sure that they will say they want to go for the cheapest one. They will say 8,000 euro is already a lot of money. I'm not going to pay double that to save a bit more energy. Also because even if they save more than 50% of the energy in the work program 3, it's still not that much in euros. But if you go a bit further in the analysis and you tell them that in work program 1 they have basically 0 subsidy, in work program 2 they have 3,000, and in the third one they have more than 3,000, they have 3,700, then that can change a bit. If you change that into loan, 15-year loan, then they will see that the work program 1 is about 50 euros a month. The number 2 is about 70, and the work program 3 is less than 80. So what they believed not realistic, 16,000 euros, becomes realistic because 80 euros a month is more realistic for most people. And if you show them that the energy saving will drop down this monthly installment to 43 euro a month in the work program 1 and exactly the same amount for work program 2 and 3, then they might go for work program 3, because with the energy savings, with the subsidies, then the work program 3 shows that the energy saving is not that much compared to the investment they have to do, but it covers most of the other costs they have to pay for energy efficiency. And for poor households who have a bit more subsidies, it's even cheaper to go for a very efficient energy program. So you see that if we take the time to show them that energy efficiency can seem expensive, but if you look at subsidies, energy savings, and the work they have to do anyway, not only for energy reasons, but just for maintenance reasons, then they can see that a very ambitious work program can be similar price or even sometimes cheaper. That's one of the very important things for in the finance engineering. And with this our one-stop shop offer, we've been working for 84 condominiums so far. It's mostly big ones, so it's almost 14,000 apartments, and 3,300 of them have already decided to carry out works. The others are either still working with us and will decide later whether they launch the works or not, and some have given up, decided not to carry out works, or at least not yet. And in average, the energy consumption is divided by 2, and a quarter of our customers are poor households. So that shows that thanks to subsidies, our offer works both for rich, average, or poor people. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Raphael. During the presentations, we got several questions from our audience members. So, Raphael, I invite you to stop sharing your screen and for everyone to turn on their cameras so we can have an open discussion about this. Thank you. So the first question I would like to address is, when selecting contractors, it is sometimes difficult to select them based on social aspects, such as hiring underemployed contractors versus the quality of their works. The audience member who asked this question can imagine that some contractors are underemployed exactly because they provide suboptimal work. Can anyone speak on this? Maybe Christina, you would like to start?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, it's indeed a big issue. So for us, the social aspect is not the main determination component for the vetting and for the selection, but it's an additional KPI that we'd like to cover. For instance, in Opengela program, the intention is to increase or decrease the gender disparities, and also to stimulate the hiring of contractors who might have had issues finding jobs due to COVID or other issues. So of course, the quality of the works is evaluated even before the social issues. So if the quality of the works is not up to par, then the contractor does not participate in a program. Or in the future, we also would like to consider additional extra training opportunities for those contractors who may need them before they even join the program. Because again, at the end of the day, it's important to highlight the technical expertise, the financial solvency of the company, their previous experience, and only then the social issues. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. If anyone would like to jump in, please do so. Otherwise, we can move on to our second question. And the second question is, how should we nudge or incentivize the behaviors of those who rent properties to be energy conscious. And the audience member isn't just referring to engaging and consulting and didactic approaches. He means, for example, a mechanism in the tenancy agreements, which would reward energy efficient behaviors with a rent reduction. And actually, Raphael, I think this relates to your point, how renters can no longer rent apartments that are F or G in energy rating. So maybe you can speak on this, and others, I see Ruel, you would like to jump in as well.
Yes, this is not completely decided. That's a climate and resilience bill that is still under discussion at the parliament, but the government has decided to, in order to encourage apartment owners and house owners, so all landlords, to do energy renovation, to take out of the market the most energy inefficient apartments, and therefore it will not be allowed to have a new renting contract if the apartment, it's already mandatory to have water, to have more than 9 square meters. So there are criteria that you must match if you want to hire an apartment. And soon there will be another criteria. In addition to having water, having electricity, having more than 9 square meters, it will be having an energy performance that is better than category G, and 4 years later, category F, and possibly we'll see what the parliament decides. Possibly category E could be also banned in 2034. That's still under discussion, but it's almost sure it will be voted for categories F and G.
Okay, thank you. Ruel, would you like to add something?
Yeah, maybe on the behavior of the inhabitants of apartments. I think in our case, these renovation advisors should also work on the behavioral aspects while giving a more technical advice. I think it should be both. And I want to refer to the scenarios Raphael showed us at the end of his presentation. I think that's a crucial thing as well. If you can convince them with real life examples of how a deeper renovation which needs a far bigger investment is in the end the most cost-effective way to renovate. Yeah, I think that can also trigger the behavioral aspect of the owners of the apartments. But I think it should be a point of attention that has to be included in the advice part of the guidance as well.
Okay, thank you. We have another question for Raphael. Oh, sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
No, move to next question. It's fine.
It's fine if you would like to contribute, please. No, okay. So Raphael, the next question is for you. The audience member says work program 3 looks quite comprehensive. Are the roof insulation standards in accordance to Passive House, or what standards do you use?
Sorry, can you repeat the end?
Yeah, are the roof insulation standards in accordance to Passive House, or which standards do you use?
No, that wouldn't be Passive House. We try to find an optimum with the subsidies and with what is feasible technically. So how wide the pavement is the space, different things like that. So usually it's more an R and thermal resistance around 4. Why we should probably go for 6 for passive, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. We have another question. These capital costs incentive schemes are excellent, but what about incentivizing the post-implementation behaviors of the building occupants, such as value-based outcomes rather than an output approach? Would anyone like to comment on this? Ruel, possibly?
Yeah, in our approach, we have this Ecotope tool developed, and basically one of the aspects is that it's offering an insight in the value, the future value of the buildings as well. So we think that that's also a very good convincing aspect of this tool and should be included in the overall guidance from day one, because also, like Raphael mentioned, we also had a study carried out showing that houses with a better energy performance have a higher selling value than the other ones with a less lower energy performance. So basically, those aspects could be used in the advice part to convince people to go for deep renovation.
I think also that many of the buildings we work for have been built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and these buildings tend to be less attractive. More and more people are not, don't really want to live in these buildings. And not only sometimes we can believe that we offer green value, but I think we also avoid brand discount, that there's a real risk for these buildings to see their value decrease a lot with new buildings being built with high energy performance and high comfort offered. And the more these buildings are built, the more the value of the buildings built between 50 and 90 tend to lose value. So it's hard to measure the fact that they don't lose value.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you. Given the timing, I think we have we'll just do one more question. And the last question is also for Raphael. Realistically, for say an aging demographic, would they really be interested in this 15-year time horizon? Of course, the length would be different for a young family, but can you comment on this, on the long-term
Loan?
Mm-hmm.
We try to offer a solution that works for all of them. So some people would rather have a short loan, some would rather have a long loan. We try to offer, for simplification reasons, we try to offer only one loan for the whole condominium. So 15 years is for us the average solution that corresponds to most people. When it's 0%, when the interest is paid by the government, people don't really care about how long it is. But when they have to pay for interest, they have 2% interest. Of course, they tend to try to have the shortest loan possible, and that's the average we found reasonable, 15 years, and what makes what we call the monthly effort, so the loan minus the energy savings, the monthly effort rather low, always below 100 euros.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you. So seeing as we are nearing the end of the webinar, I'd like to thank all of our speakers for their presentations and the answers, and to all of our audience for their questions. In the last couple of minutes, I would also like all of you, all of our audience members, to join us once again on Slido for a quick last poll. So we will put the Slido QR code up on screen. You can just scan the QR code or go to www.sly.do and type in the code 007663. And the question is as follows: what are your main takeaways from this webinar? And of course, multiple entries are allowed. So please tell us your thoughts. We have to allow some time for answers to be written. Okay, different aspects of information and program implementation strategy. Good, that was part of the themes that were of interest. Huge potential, shared successful experiences. There's a need for integrated services, and I think that opinion is shared by several of our speakers. We'll just give one more minute. We have innovative financing. And subsidies and grants are fundamental. Yes, that's correct. And interest from multiple stakeholders to engage in one-stop shops. I agree. I think this is a pretty comprehensive idea of the themes approached in the webinar. And if anyone has any questions, I encourage you all to stay in touch or to contact our speakers. So once again, I'd like to thank the speakers for attending and the audience for engaging with our speakers. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future. And thank you for attending. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.